All right, welcome to San Miguel TV. We are live. It is Sunday, January 10th, and I have a special guest today, Mr. K-Dub True. Let me see, do I have you muted? Let me get you here. I'll let you introduce yourself pretty much. But this is going to be an interesting, live pretty much, because this is me as an atheist. K-Dub is a Christian. We're going to talk about the existence of God, morality, God's nature. And we're definitely going to get into those things. But I first want to get into, who you are, of course, and maybe how you heard of my channel also. And yeah, there you go.
Yeah, man. K-Dub, or if people prefer, Chris. I'm an apologist. I do music. I take God's word serious. I became a Christian at over 10 years ago, man, and just been serious about studying apologetics, giving a reasonable defense for the faith, as the Bible says, being prepared to give an answer, but doing that with gentleness and reverence, as the scripture tells us. So yeah, man, just a person concerned with the scriptures, man. I'm just me, man. I'm, nobody special, man. But I came to hear about you, bro, when you first left, the Hebrew Israelites. I kind of was paying attention to guys like Faithful and Vocab, and kind of heard about you, and I was just subscribed ever since, and I would check out your videos kind of in the silent, and then heard that you were an atheist, and so, man, my heart just kind of wanted to even have this conversation I know we've been kind of wanting to have this for a while now, so it's finally here, so thankful.
Yeah, definitely. I knew that this was going to be great. Once I remember you commented on one of my videos maybe about a year ago. It was definitely before the whole crisis or whatever was going on. It was before that. You commented, and I thought that we were talking about chattel slavery. I think you or did you mention that?
I don't know. I don't know even what the conversation was, but slavery. I know it was like, yeah, okay.
It was definitely on slavery, because I always bring that up as a conflict for me, as a a person that believes in morality, which I definitely want to get into all of that. I'm an atheist that actually knows some scriptures. I actually, I grew up a Catholic. I was indoctrinated to be a Catholic, I think, I did all of that. I knew basic things. I really did not know scriptures. So the fact that Hebrew Israelites brought scriptures out and started trying to interpret and explain things to me, the way that I saw it, I saw that the Catholicism was at least confused about certain things. So it kind of, it was easy for me to, I guess, accept it, or it became more open to accepting Hebrew Israelism, because they showed me something I didn't know that I always thought true.
Right.
So you speak a lot to Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What do you think about I guess the movement right now? Where do you think it's going?
Man, I think the way the culture is going, it's kind of like if I was a Hebrew Israelite analytic guy, like I'd be kind of happy, because I think the culture is kind of, especially if you're, minority, Black, Hispanic, male, you hear all these conversations of racism, and that's just like, that's the culture right now. Everything's racist. White man's evil. White man's racist. I mean, that plays right into their theology, as well know, man, because that's all it's all about. I mean, and then you put the icing on the cake, and someone telling you the reason why it's happening is because you're God's chosen, ethnic people. I was like, oh man, of course, oh, that's why this is happening, and so it would just kind of, fill in the gap for you, even emotionally, although, we would reject that it being true. It would kind of give them that value they're probably looking for. And so I think, man, the culture is kind of just paving everything towards them kind of ignorantly, oddly enough.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. So we have a lot of common ground on that, because, I mean, do you find that what you see as an issue in the Hebrew Israelite community, do you find that in the Christian community?
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. That's kind of one of the saddening things I kind of see. And, I've spoken out against both, issues in the Hebrew Israelite camps, and then, in the woke church, woke Christianity, because, man, it's sad. It's sad to see it because, man, you'll listen and you'll hear them both making the same arguments. And it's like, man,
Mm,
I mean, come on, I see why the Hebrew Israelites do it, right? They interpret the scripture ethnocentrically, but then you see a Christian do it, and it's like, why are you doing the same thing? It's kind of hypocritical.
So I saw this one time in a church. I saw where all the Caucasians or the white people in the church were apologizing to black people for slavery, for just I guess Caucasians. It's like I
Yeah,
thought it was a little strange, but
yeah,
I know that churches can vary in culture and in ideologies and
right.
different political beliefs also play a big major part when it comes to religion and I guess what the church believes. So, but I saw that in the church and I was like, wow, it reminded me of when the Hebrew Israelites would be in Times Square and they would have literally white Caucasians bow down and kiss their feet.
Yeah, yeah,
Have you ever
yeah,
seen
yeah. I've definitely seen that in the Hebrew Israelite, and I know the video you're talking about too. Like there was a couple videos where besides it wasn't the kissing of the boots, but they were bowing down like in these churches, where it's like, man, it just because I do apologetics to the Hebrew Israelite, I see so many things. It's like, yo, I mean, you're literally doing the same thing the Hebrew Israelites are doing. And the funny thing is, if they saw the Hebrew Israelites doing that, they, if I gave them the benefit of the doubt, they probably would be like, man, that's wrong. But here they are having having it done to them. They're just not kissing the boot. They're bowing down to them and apologizing for things they didn't even do, and they both make the same errors.
that? Right. Yeah, I agree, man. I thought it was strange that after leaving the cult and after kind of just realizing the error of what I believed and how I condemned all white people and all of that, and being becoming more of a secular person, so to say, or whatever, and then having conversations with my family members who had nothing to do with the cult.
Right.
And they making similar arguments that I used to make when I was in the cult. Or I have I have two cousins that are in, I have one that's in the ICGJC and one that's in the IUIC.
Wow.
And they both make, the similar arguments. They have small differences in their beliefs, but
Right.
I thought it was very strange. And in some cases, it would be very educated, more liberal Democrats, people that lean more left. They would be very educated, and they were on this cancel culture tip where if you post something on Facebook, or they'll post something on Facebook saying, if you say all lives matter, just remove me. I don't want to hear, stuff like that. And I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy, because when I hear somebody say all lives matter, I don't automatically assume that they're racist or that they don't
Right.
care.
Right.
I don't know. Have you come across that all lives matter, Black Lives Matter debate? What do you think about people that say all lives matter?
Yeah. So, I mean, the statement itself is true. All lives matter. There's biblically, you can't denounce that, if you're a Christian. I think you would even say, if I affirm the Bible, that would be true, right? All lives matter because all lives are made in the image of God, right?
Right.
What I find is, you say that, and a person who affirms like Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter ideology, what they often think is, oh, well, you don't want to say Black Lives Matter, right? Like, why is that so hard? But it's like, Black lives are in the all lives matter, so it's like, but the reason why I don't want to say Black Lives Matter is because I oppose the BLM ideology, right? Black lives like just generically, right? Black lives matter, right? I'm a black person. I think Black lives matter, which is why I'm against, right? Which is why why I'm against abortion. You know what I mean?
Right.
And why?
I saw that. I saw that. That's a great point that you make. And you threw that at that. You threw like a little snippet at the end of one of your videos, right? I
Yeah,
really enjoyed that. I've seen that before,
hmm
and I really do think that's one of the major problems in the Black community. If you want to talk about what are the issues in the Black community, I mean, why are we talking about the boogeyman? It's like a white man that might, it's. I mean, not to discount what could happen, that there is racism. The fact that, of course, what we saw at the Capitol was buffoonery, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But what I did see after what happened at the in DC, the Capitol building in DC, at least, what I did see was that people were saying, if this would have been Black people, more people would have been dead. Biden said, if this would have been a BLM protest,
right,
he would have had more security and all of that. What do you think about all of that, man?
Bro, BLM have been rioting for the past year. You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? And show me one riot where the police killed and just gunned down Black people at a riot, at a protest. It hasn't happened.
Right.
You cannot find it, And so to say that, you're making an assertion with no evidence. There's nothing for you to say, well, this has happened in the past, so of course it can happen again. Then, bro, people hook, line, and sinker. They just I've heard so many people use the same argumentation too, man.
It's funny that you said that, because
Doc Rivers, the coach,
it's gonna happen again. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, bro.
I just said that to someone yesterday, and I don't know if that's the slippery slope fallacy. I might have confused it with that, but it seems similar to it. But it's still a fallacy, right? It's like, just because it happened in the past doesn't mean it's gonna happen. But yeah, I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
No, you're good, bro. I heard so many people saying that, but it's like, we haven't had anything like that since like the Rodney King era. And so many people want to take us back to slavery, bro. They want to take us back to this period we've moved past as a society, and we should be thankful that we're not there. But it's like, so many people want to live in this era. I mean, bro, you got Black Lives Matter commercials, Black Lives Matter on the NBA courts, NFL. Like, you got their ideology being painted all over the world, and people are like trying to shift to a Black Lives Matter ideology. And here you are talking about systemic racism when people are, well, I disagree with the ideology BLM is pushing, but here they are trying to cater to every Black person. Which
I find that suspicious. When people are trying to cater to Black people, I don't know why. Like, I mean, well, I know why. I have experience, in the cult, that when somebody's trying to race bait you, it's probably not for the best reason, man.
Right. Yeah, definitely, man. And so, man, I kind of hate where we're at in this culture where, and I've experienced it too, man, where I've had people come and apologize to me, white friends of mine, and I'm like, what do you, or they want to talk about a quote unquote Black issue like abortion or fatherlessness, and so they're like, so tell me your thoughts. I'm like, why do you need my thought? Like, you can speak out on it if what you're saying, you know what I mean? You don't have to ask me my opinion, just like, if I'm the only Black guy in the room, what do you think? Well,
yeah.
Just because I'm Black don't mean I'm educated on a particular subject, And
it's a little awkward, man. It's like, it's like, I know I grew up, a certain way that I was around. I mean, I grew up in Queens, New York. So, that's like the most diverse place in the world. If you really look at it. So, we make it work, man. Like, it's been working. We're getting along. We have neighborhoods of Indian Americans that are right next to neighborhoods of Colombian Americans. And it's like, racism is not an issue. At least I didn't see it as a big issue. There's definitely times when it can interfere with one's life, and I think I understand what they mean by systemic. And I really don't think that there's anybody pushing anything right now to make it a systemic issue. If anything, it's like leftover issues of racism, like maybe redlining or something like that.
Right.
This is like kind of like leftover issues that we need to somehow deal with. And I don't know how we can fix that and move people. That's going to be really hard to kind of fix.
Right.
But going back to that thought, I want to go back to that. What if this was black, if these were a black, BLM, they would have been shot more, or well, that's a friend of mine's argument. I wanted to kind of deal with that. And I've seen a lot of people saying that 50 Cent said that. I think Pete Rock put that up. It's like your typical people, Sean King, my son,
right,
Tamika Mallory. That's the typical BLM crew, right?
Here, you want to know something funny, bro? They're kind of right. It would have been different if the person was shot was black, because there would have been riots. You know what I mean? Like the NBA would have had the girl's name on the back of their jerseys. NFL would have had it on the back. But know what? The young lady that got shot unarmed was white. Nobody cares, bro.
Right.
You know what I'm hearing? She got what she deserved. Wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They don't say that when it's a BLM riot.
Yeah. Her life doesn't matter because she was black. You know what I mean?
She shouldn't have been there. They'll say.
And you know what? To be fair to both sides, we should be consistent. She shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't have been doing what she's doing. But the issue I'm not making it about is ethnicity. I don't care if she was Hispanic, black, Asian. She shouldn't have been doing what she was doing.
I find it real funny that the first thing that people are doing is comparing what would have happened if they were black. Isn't that crazy?
That is insane.
What are we doing here in this world? Like, that's not my first thought.
Right. No.
Why is that your first thought? This country is really headed backwards.
It's asinine, man. To where you wake up thinking about ethnicity all day. I think that would be
wow.
You just wake up with race on ethnicity on your mind all day, just like thinking.
That's so crazy. You sound like this is what I used to say, like to some of my. I have a lot of I guess, well, they're still Hebrew Israelites. They're former ICGJC members, right? Mm-hmm. So they're still my friends, whatever. They know I'm an atheist. I don't care, whatever. We're cool. We talk about other things. God usually doesn't come up, right? Or the Bible. But, I talk to them. And the first thing, it seems like some of these people are still like, they just look for what's the next racist story that I can show and shame white people with. Because that's all it is. It's like, it's shaming, and I realized like this is a cult tactic. I remember the shaming that used to go on in cult. That's very heavy in the Hebrew Israelite community. Period. Just shaming, bringing up the past to shame white people, and then like, why is BLM incorporating these same cult tactics? And it seems very strange, And I don't like to play sides when it comes to politics, but. Right. I think I started seeing myself agreeing with more conservatives. And I'm like, well, that's kind of funny, me as an atheist, agreeing with more conservative. I'm finding a lot of common ground with conservatives.
Right.
And, but yeah, I have cousins that, family that straight up called me like racist for not agreeing with them.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And I'm like, and that's when I was like, this was like after George Floyd. And that's when I was really like, there's something wrong. There's something wrong is happening here. Right. And how we focus so much, because I heard about Tony Timpa.
Yeah. Nobody said nothing about him, man. Nobody.
I spoke to my aunt today. She lives in Austria, right? And she knows about Breonna Taylor. She knows about George Floyd. She knows about Tamir Rice. She hasn't lived in this country in over 20 years, I think now, maybe 30 years. Well, 25 years. Of course she's tuned in because she has family still here, but the stories of there's the counterpart to Tamir Rice is a kid named Antonio Arce. Nobody knows about Antonio Arce, a Hispanic kid from Arizona. Aren't you from Arizona?
No, I'm from Texas.
From Texas. Okay. I thought I saw you on Arizona State campus or university.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, but yeah, just my point is that, it's the man, you just want to make it more of an issue when it's a black person, but when it's anybody else, it's not. You know, race is not an issue. We don't put the race of the victim or the officer in the headline,
right?
Unless it's a black victim. And it's I started noticing that. I thought it was very strange.
And here's how we know this is being pushed for some ideology like that the media wants us to affirm, right? Because you know, when all the Black Lives Matter, the Antifa, all the stuff, the riots were happening, bro, silence. You know, what were they being called, right? Peaceful protest, you know.
Mostly peaceful, right?
mostly peaceful. And then I saw people even justifying the riots, you know, like people would I saw Christians doing it, bro, like saying, well, even Jesus flipped tables, and they were using it as a justification for why sometimes it's okay to riot and loot and steal, and which is crazy. But then, you know what? A bunch of Republicans do it. And guess what they're saying now? These riots are evil. And so it's like, you know, I mean, you're not being consistent. Because I can say, look, both were evil, both were messed up, both shouldn't have been done. Because I'm not gonna pick the sides of the conservatives when they're wrong. I'm like, no, y'all shouldn't have. You guys should not have stormed the Capitol. You know, like, and when you do messed up stuff, guess what? People can get hurt, and you know that's my explanation for why the young girl got shot. Look, you cannot storm a governmental building, but you know what? They doing that in Portland. They, you know, BLM does, you know, stuff like that. And guess what? Nobody ever gets shot.
Yeah, that's true. They burnt down police precinct.
Yeah,
in Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota.
I was watching all of that very closely, and that's when I started really, like, it was obvious at that point. I was noticing it for a while, and I never really cared to speak about it, but I still looked at it, and what I realized is that it kind of takes responsibility. Well, a lot of what this leads to when you talk about like systemic racism. Now we take accountability and responsibility away from people that might commit crime because they're supposed to, or you know, it's kind of like they expect that because of whatever, you know, their race or their you know, where they live or something like that. And I started noticing that, and I was like, man, it's a double standard pretty much. It's an obvious double standard. And I started putting these stories side by side. I started researching, okay, where do we have a story of a botched raid, right? A home raid that was a botched raid, and you know, Google it. And I Googled one. It would come up. One in Houston came up of a couple that the officer. I mean, this is everything BLM is looking for. It was 3 dirty cops. They created a false report. They killed the man, the woman, and the dog in the house. And 11 months went by and nobody got prosecuted. But when it happened to Breonna Taylor, it was not even 3 months and they were rioting. People from BLM literally moved to was it Louisville, Kentucky?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, if you I follow my son, you know, he was a good rapper, so I used to follow him. But he's become really he's an activist now. That's his career now. He's no longer a rapper. He's an activist, I guess. Man. You know, he chose a new career path. And I look at it and I'm like, this guy moved from wherever he was living to go live in Louisville so he can demand every day, every morning, be it, you know, demanding these officers and harassing them. It's like, I don't understand, you know, I guess because it's the emotional appeal, right? It's the emotional appeal of a black person, and with Breonna Taylor, a black woman, which is even more of an emotional appeal.
Right.
That was the one right there. I mean, Oprah was putting up signs, billboards. So, yeah, I know that it's a problem that's permeating Christian everywhere. You know. So, let me see. I wanted to talk about, well, with that same idea, let's go back, since this is pretty relevant and just recent. People that say if this would have been black people that came into the building. Now, there was a story. Of course, this is just, right? The Black Panthers came into the Capitol building. with rifles in about 1967. They didn't break anything. It wasn't like, it was definitely not like what happened in DC, but nobody got shot. That's the only other example I can think of that's when, you know, them entering a Capitol building, somebody that's not white, pretty much, black people entering the Capitol building. And nobody got shot. They got arrested. They were protesting their rights, which is, of course, just, I believe. But when we say they would have got shot or they would have been dead, somebody did die, right? Somebody did get.
Yeah.
And not only that, there were black people amongst the Trump supporters.
Right.
So to say that is I think is a little bit illogical. And not only that, but you have the president of a country that actually was the one in charge of the security, and he kind of just allowed this to happen. So to compare that to something like a BLM riot, which we know, we have history of it, you know, being violent and destructive, of course that people were going to be better prepared for that. So yeah, like I just wanted to go through that really quick because I thought that was very interesting. And a lot of people, you know, even atheists like that claim to be, you know, to be champions of logic and reason. They fall for this, man. They falling for this.
Yeah,
so it's funny that it's affecting, you know, atheists. It's affecting Christians.
Yeah.
But so I'm trying to see where we could go from here. Let me see. I had a few questions.
No problem.
If you wanted to say anything else on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of hate, you know, where, you know, if I speak out, if I don't share kind of this black thought, this black ideology, then hey, I'm not even black. I've been called, I can't tell you, bro, how many times I've been called a white supremacist. Bro, white people have called me the N-word. It's like, bro, you can be as racist as you want as long as you accept this ideology that says you can't be racist, you know, which is like extremely racist. Like when you think about it, like how much more racist can you get to where even the racism you do can be justified as it's not even racist. Like, bro, that's racism on an extreme level, you know.
Well, just to get into the scriptures and racism. Let's talk about racism in the scriptures.
Right.
So that's one thing that for me, I saw that, okay, in the Old Testament, at least, I know, you know, you probably have, you know, and I'll let you explain it, but you know, the pretty much the idea of choosing one nation over another, I would say that that's an idea of racism. But what would the Christian response be to that? Because, you know, Hebrew Israelites love to point that out.
Yeah.
We're a one chosen people above all people, I guess, Deuteronomy 7:6, for example. Then Jesus Christ. Now, you know, I think I kind of understand it, but I would rather you just explain it. Because,
So the reason why I wouldn't say it isn't racist is because God didn't choose that nation based on nationality or ethnicity. He actually, the reason why he chose them was based on his power, because he says in Deuteronomy or Exodus, I'll have to look it up here in a second, but he states that the reason why they were chosen is because they, like, you the smallest, you the least of the people, and that way I'm going to get glory when they see this nation that's so small just showing out, so to speak. Like, man, this nation is so powerful. This nation is being blessed, and here they are we're way more numerous than them. Like, look, it must be because of God. You know, that was the reason. You know, had nothing to do with the ethnicity. That's what, you know, the Black Hebrew Israelites get it wrong. You know,
right. And I always thought it was strange. You know, I mean, it was always a little uncomfortable for me as a Hispanic, you know, to be out there. But I was really bold with it, man. Like, I was one of the higher ranks, at least in my city. And I would literally be out there on microphones in the street, you know, bold, talking about, you know, the white man this and the white man. I did my DNA some years later. Like, come to find out, well, I'm mostly from the Iberian Peninsula. So, you know, I mean, yeah, so it's a lot of issues with that. But yeah, I get it. With the race, they love to go into those scriptures. And those were scriptures that to me were like, okay, how can I get around this and keep my belief, you know?
Right.
So I left the Hebrew Israelite belief, and I was still, I don't know if I would call myself a Christian at that time, though, you know? Because I deprogrammed from the Hebrew Israelite doctrine, which, I mean, I'm not going to lie, it definitely jaded, I guess, the what would be a better interpretation of the Bible, right? They take the scriptures and, you know, find color and everything, or find race and everything. You know, Revelation, the description of Christ is definitely not talking about what they're saying.
Right.
I learned that later, speaking to Faithful to God, you know, to you know, those guys that they were, you know, vocab. They cleared a lot of things up there for me that was very, very helpful. And I was actually looking at some of those videos on my journey out. So I was helped by Christians to deprogram, you know, as far as some of the doctrines, right? But then somewhere down the line, I ended up questioning the validity of the scriptures themselves, the Bible itself, and why should I trust this anyways?
Yeah.
You know, and it was a long journey trying to understand and find, you know, my way, I guess. Do you think looking at your video, I mean, I think that I don't have a good reason, you know, to believe it in these, in a God, in the scriptures, in everything, at least, and just kind of take it all as you know, not dissect it individually, but just take all the Bible and just say, oh, this is all true. I like to look at everything and see, well, do I have a reason to believe in this? You know, but do you think that that is suppression on my side? Because I remember going through your video, that it is kind of, you don't believe that anybody can be neutral, right?
Right.
So it's more like a suppression. So just to get into that, because, you know, that was what pretty much started this live. We wanted to talk about these biblical, you know, these issues that I had, and maybe you can shed some light. Maybe there's somebody in online that, you know, on the live chat that might, you know, consider this useful. And maybe I'll consider it useful, you know, but I am open-minded to the idea of a God. I can understand why people believe in a God, but I just don't feel that I have a good reason to believe in it, you know. But, you know, we'll talk about that. What do you think?
Yeah, so like I said, we can get into like I believe there is every reason to believe in God, but kind of dealing with your first point about suppression, man, I can remember, man, I've dealt with it so many times with unbelievers. I go to college campuses, man, and I love having this conversation. To me, it's not done enough. I think a lot of, like, especially college students are craving for, like, they're intellectually, like, curious, and, like, sometimes you have Christians on there who man, they just don't really, like, get into those conversations. And so I love to do it. I've been blessed to go on college campuses and do that. But man, I've asked the question numerous times to atheists on college campuses, man, if I can demonstrate to you right now that God exists, and you know for a fact, like, there's no question, like, would you bow down and worship him? Right. And oftentimes the answer is like, no, I wouldn't. It's like, so it's like, you don't want the very thing that you're claiming you would be, you know, it's so to me, it's not a matter of evidence, you know, when it gets into that.
I remember that. If I could just say, I think that I can still believe something exists and not want to worship it, though, right? So,
well, if the God of the Bible is true and what he says he is, and I would be able to, if I was able to demonstrate that to you, then he demands worship. Right. And so what I'm saying is, the very thing that I would be proving to you is the very thing you would need to worship him. Like you would, like, he demands worship. You know what I mean? He demands, because he's your creator, right? And so the creator demands worship. It's not like, oh, okay, yeah, you exist, and run off do your own thing. Like, that's not the Christian God. It's not a deist or anything. And so, I believe, like, so, like, I've talked to people who who are atheists out of convenience. And I'm not saying this is you, but I
Mhm.
do think people have different reasons why they come to the position. So I'm not saying this is you, but like um
I
to
agree.
the to the person who sometimes you'll talk to his atheist and you come to find out, well, the reason why he's an atheist is because he's living with his girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like he don't want to give up his sex with his girl because he's an atheist now. You know, like
Right.
man, my in-laws, my sister-in-law is kind of like, well, not that exact example, but she just atheist out of convenience, so she can like live her life like not according to the Bible. Like,
Mhm.
hey, I get it though. I get, man, I was the same way, bro. I
Mhm.
claim to believe in God, but bro, I was practically an atheist. I lived my life like an atheist, you know, growing up. I didn't acknowledge God. I did what I wanted. I slept with who I wanted. I drank what I wanted. You know what I mean? Whatever. And so, I do think I do think that that idea of suppression is key. Um, and so, yeah, I would, yeah, just
I,
yeah,
I I saw that a lot in what you were saying, where just like by affiliation, you just become an atheist.
mhm,
I seen that in the cult.
yeah,
By affiliation, the wives become Hebrew Israelites. They don't really want to.
yep,
A lot of
yep,
times, they're forced into it.
yeah,
And I had to always deal with these brothers coming to me, telling me, my wife doesn't really, I'm having trouble with her. What should I do? Should I leave her?
yeah,
Crazy, but no, that's true. And I think there are some people that left the cult. I can think of a few that left the cult that dropped Christianity because of the experience they went through, and they don't want to even open the Bible now.
yeah. No, I
It
get that too,
confuses
man.
them.
Yeah, I get that because like I think there is something pretty dramatic about leaving a cult like the one you left, like Jehovah's Witness, like Mormon. I mean, there's so many cults, you can crazy, so many cults, but I think there is something dramatic, especially those centered around the Bible. I think there's something dramatic because I think issues like, man, can I trust like anybody even saying, well, this is like how I know they're not trying to get me in another cult, like, from
Yeah.
people, man, people get tired.
Mhm.
I don't believe it's an excuse, but people get like emotionally drained. Like here, like imagine someone in Jehovah's Witness for like 20 years, man. They were knocking on doors, all to come find out it was fake, it was false.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
It
I
was a
had,
little tough for me. I ain't gonna lie, but
yeah, no, I get it. I had an experience like that to where I was in the Word of Faith movement. I was in like the prosperity gospel, like
Mhm.
TBN preacher, Joel Osteen, Creflo Dollar type stuff, man, when I first became a Christian. And I'm not gonna lie, man, when I came to find out it was false, bro, I was angered. I was, I'm talking about like anger, like I wanted to show up at people's churches, like, bro,
Mhm.
you deceived me, man. Like,
Wow.
you know what I mean? Like I was angered, man, and it took a while for me to like um get right, so to speak, to
Yeah,
where and then like you read those certain scriptures and your mind is automatically thinking how people twist those texts, to you. I'm sure you think of that, man. If ever you come across a Bible passage, like, man,
yeah,
that's how they use that against, and so I
yeah,
get that.
yeah. It was a little tough for me to go back to those same scriptures that I used to believe a certain way, and then kind of erase that, and then because it's
Yeah,
kind of like you always hear that voice in the back of your head,
yeah,
But
yeah,
after a while, it was, the fear of the cult went away, and it was easy for me to go back to the Bible, and I started reading it more. And I remember coming to a point where I read about, I think it's in 2 Kings chapter 19. You probably heard me talk about this with Sennacherib's prism, and I came across that. I actually brought that up to Guerrilla Hebrew when we had our discussion. So I was like, okay, in Sennacherib's prism, there's no mention of the angels that is mentioned in 2 Kings chapter 19 or chapter 20. Oh, I think it's the story continues on, like it's like a 3-chapter story, and
hmm,
it's the invasion, and so I have a historical document here of the prism that was interpreted and no mention of angels, but then I have the Bible, which is I do consider historical documents also to some degree. But then there's no mention of it, of those. I mean, I'm sorry. Then there is a mention of angels in the Bible where they killed a certain amount of the Assyrians. It does mention the history of when Sennacherib, I believe, goes back and his son murders him. So it's like, you see that history is in the Bible. That's correct, but that could have always been written later after the fact, which I mean, I believe it was, but there's no mention of the angels. So how would you tell a person like me, well, how can I reconcile that? You know what I mean?
So you're saying like one passage mentions like just a historical, and another part mentions like the angels doing it?
Well, the two stories are pretty accurate. I mean, you have one in the Bible where it mentions the invasion of Judah, and Sennacherib and the Assyrians came in. They had already took over the 10 tribes. Mm-hmm. And so this is historical. And you can look it up. It's Sennacherib's prison, and it's it's in some museum now. And of course we're relying on interpretation, right? But they interpreted that prism, and it doesn't mention the part in the Bible where it mentions that angels came and killed some Assyrians, and the Assyrians ran off. When you're
saying, oh, so this is a outside source.
Outside of the Bible.
Okay, cool, yeah.
Yeah. So when I saw that, I considered it, and I said, well, I was trying to verify how can I believe in the stories of the Bible and my confidence level in the Bible. How, it was pretty much like, it wasn't that high. Now I'm like looking at it and I'm seeing, okay, well, the supernatural part of it, which I consider angels supernatural, that's not in the story of the Assyrians. So I considered that at least like, an issue for me, because
yeah.
So and then also Mark, at the end of Mark chapter, are there certain things in the Bible? Let's say I guess I could ask that. Are there things in the Bible that you probably would say, well, this is not divinely inspired by God, but some of them are?
So, that's a large question. Let me answer the first one first. As far as like, because you have like there's non-Christian sources about the death of Jesus, right? And
yes.
So, but there's some that don't mention the resurrection, and so it wouldn't deter me that a non-Christian source doesn't mention the things of the Bible, especially if they're coming from a non-supernatural worldview. And so that's why I think the issue of worldview is actually large into this, because I mentioned it in my video, bro. We can both look at a rock, right? It's it's evidence for something, and we can both look at it differently. And so I don't expect someone who's operating on non-supernatural presuppositions to leave that out or something like that. So I think there's explanations for that. Okay. So I think the issue kind of gets to your second question. Mm-hmm. If we start with the presupposition that God's word is inspired and from him, well, I think dealing with issues like you brought up are more simpler to explain and understand. And so, do I believe all the Bible is divinely inspired? Yes, I do. But there's an art of what's known as textual criticism. So I do think there are things that have been, I'm not going to say added, because I don't think these things were intentional, but, and I think the art of textual criticism kind of gets into like why these things happen. So for example, 1 John 5:7, right there, 3 that are bear witness, the water, the spirit, the blood. I don't think that was original, because going back to dating, that's not something that was early in the manuscript. From my understanding, from reading people, that's not something that shows up until like over 1,000 years later. But you wouldn't blame that on the Bible, right? So if I wrote a book right now, and in 1,000, and so like, right, people copied it and like they made early manuscripts. Mm-hmm. That will be those original copies. So you have, and let's say we lost my manuscript, my what I wrote, but we have the copies. Right. I believe you could still be able to put what I said based on the validity of those manuscripts. And if someone came 1,000 years later and added, a whole chunk of paragraph, you wouldn't be like, well, Chris's works are trash. You know, they're not even reliable. You know, they got errors in it. Well, that's not even what I wrote. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so there is an art of textual criticism that Christians have been doing, man, ever since the Bible was written, funny enough. And so, yeah, it's hard work. The Bible wasn't just dropped from heaven. I recognize that. It has a real history. Hold on a second. I have a book about that. Canon Revisited by Michael Kruger, man. He gets into a lot of stuff we're talking about now, man. And so
Canon Revisited by Michael Kruger.
Michael Kruger, man. He has excellent lectures, you know, and just resources on just the history and the canonicity of the Bible. So it's something that Christians are aware of and you know, take serious. It's not just like, oh well, we're just gonna believe by faith and you know, we're not gonna worry about the difficult stuff. You know, it's like I'm not into that. I mean, you might I've heard Hebrew Israelites have not dealt with subjects like what we're talking about in any in-depth way, right? Like the history of the canon. I've never heard a Hebrew Israelite be able to tell you even basic things what I'm telling now, like just the textual variants. Like I would be surprised if like someone in Sakari knew what a textual variant was, you know, or IUIC would know what a textual variant even is, or when these things came about, or you know, because they, you know, a lot of them are KJV onlyist, but there's a lot of things in there that like man, we can show did not come in the early datings of the manuscripts, but like they first pop up in King James, you know, translation and stuff like that. And so, yes, I believe so. When you talk about the, you know, do I believe the Bible is divinely inspired? Yes, and its original manuscripts is what it's referring to. But I do believe we have valid copies, and I do believe we have valid copies of the apostles' writings, the prophets' writings, things like that.
Yeah. You're definitely correct that it should be contextualized. We need to study the words. We need to get a good context, a good understanding. Hebrew Israelites don't understand any of those things. Like you said, you know, you tell them what Mago Day is. They don't understand. You know, they don't like Christians. When I first came across Mike with Faithful to God, we live in the same city, actually.
Oh, word. Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've been wanting to really get up with that guy. It's been a while since we spoke, so hopefully he watches this. You got to call me, bro.
Yeah.
You know, talking to him, I asked him a lot of these questions. We had great conversations before we went live. I would ask him, well, you know, what's your interpretation of Jeremiah 14:2? Because I was really like still like not understanding some of these things because I didn't go through everything. I went through like kind of piece by piece, you know, but yeah, watching a Christian Apologist really made me understand that, you know, there's an art to this. There's definitely a better way to defend your beliefs than just spouting or name calling, all of that, you know, intimidation, which is what's done in these camps. But yeah, I like, that's why I like your channel. That's why I was like, yeah, this is going to be a great conversation. You couldn't do this with a lot of the Hebrew Israelites. They're just not open. They're just not open to talk.
No.
Who have you spoken to? Which Hebrew Israelites? I think I saw that you and well, go ahead. Who have you spoken to?
Me and Brother Jay did a debate on the deity of Christ with Gorilla Hebrew and Deacon.
Yeah,
we did that. I've done some debates with like moderate people like Zadok. I don't know if you know who that is. He kind of runs in like Christian circles, oddly enough, so Christian rap circles. Just lesser known people, you know, that, you know, they're not maybe leaders in camps, but they just, you know, they want to pull me to the side and, you know, correct me, you know, some stuff. So they give me a call and we end up having a, you know, 3-hour phone call or something. So I've had lots of conversations, and man, they just go over, they got a what do you call it? They have a checklist. They have a certain, like, look, this is how the conversation is going to go no matter what he brings up. And you know what I mean? Like, they, no matter what we talk about, we're gonna get into nationality, ethnicity, bro. We could be talking about history of the Bible like we're talking about here, and we'll see. What you got to understand is that this is like, bro, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Like
Yeah.
that's where they want to put the conversation at every time. And that's why I've said, man, for Hebrew Israelites, the gospel is who you are, not what Christ has done. You know what I mean?
Right. It's an identity call, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about that on my last live. You mentioned that identity call. It's very important to understand that when dealing with Hebrew Israelites, because it's all about race. Everything
Right.
goes to what is your race, or and then when it does come to conversations, they want to know what you believe, just so they can attack it instead of trying to really teach you. If you really look at how they teach, if they don't know what you believe, they don't really want to address you, because then they have to defend what they believe.
Right.
Instead of being on the defense, they want to be on the attack constantly.
Yeah.
I think that's where they have their best. I guess that's where they have some appeal. When they're on the offense, they look very passionate.
Yeah.
That's something that attracted me. I always looked at like Malcolm X. I was always attracted to him because of how passionate he was and how assertive and sure he was. But then I knew I didn't believe in Allah. I didn't even give it a chance. I was like, I don't even have to look that up. I heard, but I was always attracted to that, and I think that is also what makes a Black Hebrew Israelite belief attractive. Is that their passion, that they're out there in the street, they're trying to speak up for Black people and be a champion in a way. So, but you can do that using the Bible without using race at all, and without bringing any identity and race into it. I think that you can, if you stick at least to the New Testament and Jesus Christ's words. Well, actually, hold on. We got Matthew chapter 15 was a scripture that we always used to bring up to Christians. Yeah, I forgot. I wanted to ask you about that. So the woman that Jesus, I think I heard Vocab Malone give a pretty good breakdown of that. But just so the Hebrew Israelites that come on my channel, just so they can hear a Christian break this down. Matthew chapter 15, verse 24, the woman that Jesus Christ said that salvation, well, no, I'm sorry, that's in John 4. That it's not meet for to give for the master. We can look it up if you want.
Yeah, I'm looking at it here. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Hebrew Israelites love to bring that scripture up to show that Jesus Christ is only pro, Hebrew Israelites. So
Yeah. You want me to break it down?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So like I'll read 24 through 26 because this is usually where they kind of get a lot of their ideology. He answered, I was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So boom, right? Jesus only came for the Israelites. That's what he said, right? Verse 25, but she came and knelt before him saying, Lord, help me. See, that's why you got to bow down, right? Kiss these boots, something like that.
Right.
Verse 26, and he answered, it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. So, right, this is this Canaanite woman who comes to Jesus, and this is what Jesus says. And on the face of it, it looks pro-Black Hebrew Israelite. Right. Until you read the rest of the passage and the rest of Matthew. Right. Because in the end of Matthew, right, he says that the gospel is to go out to all nations. What they want to interpret that to mean all Israelites in all nations, but that's not what the nations mean. No. It's to the all the people groups, all tongues, tribes, and nations. Right. Even in the end of this passage, look what Jesus verse 28, bro. Jesus says something that no Hebrew Israelite would ever say to a Gentile, especially a Gentile woman. But he says, then Jesus answered her, "O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desired." And so here it is. Jesus says, and he heals her daughter. He says she has great faith. Wait a minute. Like, how does this woman, this Gentile pagan woman, have great faith? Especially if Jesus was a Black Hebrew Israelite, teaching all their ideology, of course. And so that as they like to say, that passage cuts them right there. And so.
Right. Is this also in Mark? Is this the Greek woman, the Syrophoenician woman? Mark chapter 7, I think, is the other.
Let me look it up.
Mark chapter 7, verse 24, I believe. It's been a while.
This one's with the Canaanite woman.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so it's a different. No,
Okay.
it's the same passage. Same passage.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that one actually goes into better details about it. Let me see if I can find it here. You have it there?
Yeah, I got it.
What does it say? I think it's 24, is it? March 7, 24?
Yeah, that's where it starts. And from there he arose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and he entered a house and did not want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell down at his feet. Now this woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth. And she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he said to her, let the children be fed first, for it's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. But she answered him, yes, Lord. Yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And he said to her, for this statement you may go your way. The demon has left your daughter. And she went home and found the child lying in bed and the demon gone. So yeah.
Right. So yeah, we used to pull that a lot. And so you're saying that he still blessed her, right? So okay, so he still blessed her. If she was such a heathen, why would he do that, right?
Right. Because they don't bless nobody. All they do is curse people on the streets, you know?
Exactly. And then another way to go against that is that at the end of Matthew 28, he says, go thee unto all nations and make them disciples, I believe.
Yeah, because Jesus' ministry primarily was to Israel, right? We have in scriptures like Romans 1:16, 1:17, I believe, it talks about to the Jew first, then to the Greek, right? To the Jew first, then to the Gentiles. So Jesus' ministry was primarily to the Jewish people, but in that there was a small remnant of Gentiles that came to him, and that he said that were saved, that were blessed. And then we see in the apostles' ministries, especially Paul's, it was primarily Gentiles he was dealing with, you know. Right. And so it's not even, you know, all of scripture taken into context. They don't really deal with that. That's why they got to go precept on precept, here a little, there, you know, they got to cherry pick. That's all that is.
Right. Yeah, there's like a few others, but I remember that Gentile breakdown. There's two types of Gentiles, right? You have the Israelites that went off into the other nations. That's how they teach it. And then there's the Gentiles that are natural Gentiles.
Right.
My thing was always, how do I distinguish who's who when I'm reading this?
Exactly. I remember asking Guerrilla Hebrew that on the street one time, because he was like living in Dallas for a while when I still lived in Dallas. And I asked him that same question. And I think he said something like, well, you got to deal with the context. But then it's like they never deal with the context when you do it. So it's like it's kind of funny, but because like something like this, Ephesians 2:11, it says, therefore remember that at one time you Gentiles in the flesh. So I'll ask this question before I get into a passage like this. If I said you were a Gentile in the flesh, what would I be saying to you? And they'll be like, you be calling me a Gentile, like ethnic. Oh, okay, cool. So we agree. And so here it calls them a Gentile in the flesh. Call the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, which is made in the flesh by hands. It's almost like Paul's going out of his way, prophetically talking to the Black Hebrew Israelites, like, yo, this is a real Gentile. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then he goes on to say, like, they're joined to the Jews in the same body by faith. You know, and that's the wall of hostility that he broke down. I know they like to make that between the northern and the southern kingdom, but contextually, it's talking about ethnic Jews and ethnic Gentiles. And so, yeah,
that's a good one. That's a good scripture right there to combat what they say. But what they'll bring up, I remember this now, is John 7:35. You probably heard that before. John chapter 7, verse 35. I already have it up, but I'll read it. It says, well, which version do you prefer, actually?
I typically read the ESV, but
yeah, I've been liking that one a lot more. The Jews said to one another, where does this man intend to go that we will not find him? Does he intend to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? Okay, so see, it's a little different when you don't read the King James.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's read the King James. It says, Then, well, yeah. Then said the Jews among themselves, whither will he go, that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles? So the dispersed the dispersed are the Israelites. Among the Gentiles would be the natural Gentiles. And then it says, and teach the Gentiles. They say that that's the Israelites, Gentiles.
Yeah.
So that's how they twist it, you see?
Yeah.
It's tricky as hell.
That's crazy.
When you read the English Standard Version, it says, does he intend to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? So it's kind of the same, I guess. I guess they can still, so you see what they do though, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So how would you reply to that? Just so
well, I would say that, so when it says does he intend to go to the dispersion, I would say, yeah, those are the Israelites, right, who are among the Greeks, right? There are Israelites who accepted the Greek customs and stuff like that, but that doesn't make them a ethnic Gentile. They don't change ethnics by accepting, I don't know, Greek customs or things like that. But so when it says, so but notice in the passage he makes a distinction between even the dispersions, dispersion people, ethnic, Jews and Greeks.
exactly.
Because they have to make Greeks in this one verse, in this one sentence and phrase mean two different things. So the first time Greeks are mentioned, it means real Greeks. The second time it's mentioned, it means Israelites. And so it's like, contextually, what is your evidence for saying in this short little phrase, it's changed meanings? You know what I mean? And so oftentimes they got to go to, well, let's look at this passage over here. It's like, no, don't jump out of the context to prove your point. Because I'm not saying there wouldn't be a valid argument somewhere in the scriptures where that's done. I'm saying it would be contextually, like the context would demonstrate that, though. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I get it. It should, but they look for little things like that all the time.
Oh yeah.
To show to prove their point, which they already assumed from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you look at the 12 tribes sign.
Oh yeah.
They everything is presupposed, and when were you talking about all right, so that video that you were talking about your presupposition and why it's so important, I also wanted to ask you about that because you mentioned the speed limit as an authority, and I thought about that for a while. I said, but when it comes to a speed limit, I think that well, okay, so we say that we have to obey the speed limit because
that's what the law says.
Right. The law says this, but the reason why there's a reason why the law says that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking for reasons for why I should follow. I mean, I'm sure we can create reasons for why there's certain laws and why there's possible good benefits, but I think I could go into certain parts. Well, I mean, that's the Old Testament, and show that some of these laws are, I guess, irrelevant, the fringes, some of the things. But when it comes to a speed limit, the reason why they do that is they use the reasons are safety, things like that. So even though the authority is the state, the reasons for that is safety. And if we follow that as like a guide, I think that, we can, that there's no problem with saying, this is why I believe this is good.
Yeah. So I guess I should explain that a little more when I was getting into it. So I'm not saying there aren't secondary reasons, there aren't other reasons, but the ultimate reason at the end of the day, why you should not go, let's say most highways in Texas are like 70. The reason why you should not is because the law has said, like at the end of the day, the officer don't gotta like, if you go 75, he can give you a ticket and he don't have to say, well, you need to be safe, you need to yada yada. You know what I mean? The ultimate reason is because the law has been broken. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to speak. And so that's what I was meaning, like with presuppositions. And so I was kind of like in that section, kind of getting into ultimate authority. I believe even if people haven't have a real well-orbed well-defined worldview or ideology, everyone has the ultimate authority, even if they haven't thought about it. Everyone has a authority where it says, well, this is why I'm going to do this, and this is why I think this is okay. For some people, it's government. Whatever the government says makes it okay. You know what I mean? Some people, it's their parents. Some people, it's themselves. You know, and so that's kind of like what I was getting at in that section, like authority.
I could see why I could see why Christians look at that and say, okay, my ultimate authority is God. You know, and it's more powerful. You know what I mean? It's like, it means it's more, there's more meaning behind it. So just saying, oh, because you know, a person said so, it doesn't sound as meaningful or powerful as, oh, you know, my God says so. So there's a lot of power behind that.
Well, not even just like, it's like the Trump card, like, gotcha, I played God, you know what I mean? You're done. Not just even that. But there is consistency. So ultimately, I don't believe that a person can live consistent in God's world and reject him, right? So I've dealt with many atheists who say, right, there's no objective truth. There's no you have Richard Dawkins who say there's no such thing as good or evil, only blind, pitiful indifference. That's an exact quote from Richard Dawkins.
I just heard that earlier, actually.
Yeah. And so he'll say things like that. That's right. That's his atheist, you know, his humanistic ideology, his worldview speaking right there, right? Anti-Christian worldview right there. But then he'll say things like, you know, you shouldn't do that. He'll claim like the God of the Old Testament is evil. But you just said there's no such, so ultimately I don't, so that's why I think like with ultimate authorities, like you see when ultimate authorities battle each other, right? Because we're right now in a worldview of battles culturally going on right now, as we kind of talked about. When worldviews clash, you see the superior one. You know what I mean? Like two cars, man, coming together, man. You're gonna see which one wins out, you know. And so ultimately, I would say that the Christian worldview, i.e., God Himself, is superior to all other, you know. And so,
gotcha. Yeah. Okay. I mean, obviously, you chose it for a reason. So, I mean, I remember talking to Vocab recently, and I said, we were talking about, well, I basically said, it's kind of strange that the left right now, the ones that are typically not, I guess, you know, they don't really profess God, you know, I mean, their ideology is at least not in line with what I see when I look at the Bible, what God, you know, we could talk about pro-life, you know, pro-choice and all of that. When you go to the left, they're usually pro-choice. Biblically, I guess it would be pro-life. I mean, that's another thing I wanted to get into. But
yeah, good.
Just to make my point, because the power with Christianity and how it does push for more moral lifestyle, you know, I'll definitely say that modern day Christianity does push for that. I believe that the reason that BLM is so wild, you know, and the riots and just the beliefs and just everything going on around them is because they probably don't have that authority, that moral authority that they can base, you know, they don't know where to look. They can't look at the government. They probably, right?
They look to Marx.
They look to Marx, who was a real racist, wasn't he?
Right. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, they profess that. So
right.
I look at that. I look at the you know, the three women that started BLM, and they don't seem to be religious in a way, right? I think I mean I think they're atheists. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
they seem to be.
Yeah, I would say because Karl Marx was an atheist, that would be kind of, and they're claiming to be Marxists. That, you know, now there are people who try to um, synchronized Christianity and Mark. So there's that out there. But I think I've never heard them say anything positive about Christianity or anything that made me think they're Christian. So I would assume they're atheists,
Right. Yeah.
Humanist or something.
Right. So I remember telling Vocab that I was like, it's just funny that, it's kind of like where I was when at a certain time, and maybe like, let's say I left the cult. I was trying to find my way. I wasn't a Christian anymore. I didn't believe in the Bible, and I'm like a secular humanist, I guess. I was watching a lot of the Atheist Experience. I was watching a lot of the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. So yeah, my worldview started being molded in a way because I was watching them, and then I started realizing I don't really agree with them on a lot of things anymore.
Yeah.
As far as Matt Dillahunty, he's I don't know where he's going anymore. I kind of like lost interest in watching them now. And it was very strange. And I came across, you heard of David Silverman.
Yeah.
Right. So he's like a conservative atheist. And I started realizing, I think
his daughter isn't, right?
Oh, right. I don't know. I know he's had a ton of issues.
Yeah.
I mean, forget it. We could go on and on about that guy. But I mean, as far as like being a conservative, those values of what conservatism is, you're not usually going to riot. You're not usually going to you're not going to loot, right? I mean, I don't want to speak for all of them, but the fact that they have that, most of the people that consider themselves conservatives have a moral authority, which they say that, because we're created in the image of God, I love you as God loves us. And, I understand that. So it's like, they're not going to be out there throwing rocks at, police officers, because those are people that are made in the image of God. So the ideology works. Like, it works, man, and it's been working for a while. The father and the whole father, the nuclear family, right? It works, right? The fact that BLM wants to tear that down, I think, is really it scared off a lot of people,
yeah,
including myself, and they had to remove that recently. They removed it from their page.
Yeah.
So it no longer says that, but that, just looking at them as a whole and considering, I started looking at conservatives and Christians, and I said, you know what, I kind of appreciate the ideology and the morals that come from that, the Christian side, because it's kind of at least keeps people in line. It keeps people focused on humanity, whether they believe that it comes from a God. But I think that even God as an authority is still subjective, because it's based upon God's opinions, right? So wouldn't that still be a subjective worldview if it's coming from a God?
Well, yeah. I would say no, because God is all knowing, God is all good, and so it's, I guess, from a subjective, because it's what God says, but
right.
In the sense of ultimate truth, it's true. God is true. What He says is right. It's good for humanity. I would say is objective. So because if that's the case, if we're getting to like, we're getting real philosophical now, which I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But if kind of like what you're getting at is, well, it's subjective, because if you say it's subjective, what is
subjective? Yeah. What is?
Yeah.
What?
So subjective is like looking to self, looking inner to like find the answer, right? Objective is like outside of oneself.
Right.
The reason why that does not apply to God is He is the sustainer of all truth. No human is. No human that is, right? No human is like the sustainer of truth. We can't say like, this wasn't true before me and it won't be true after me. Like that's not the reality. Like, there were things that were true before I existed. So truth is not based on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like gravity existing, gravity is a fact. It's true, but it's not true because I recognized it. It's not true because I discovered it. It was true before that, and it'll be true long when I'm gone.
Murder was always wrong.
Right. Yeah. And
So,
so, yeah.
Well, that's actually a question that I did have.
Yeah, let's get into it. Murder. So the reason why murder is wrong. So a lot of atheists like so this is a conundrum atheists like to put on Christians, and I'll kind of get into it. Like, is murder wrong because God says it's wrong?
Right.
Or is murder wrong because murder is wrong? And so what they're trying to get at is like the moment God says it, that makes it wrong. Or
right.
Is murder wrong? So like, does murder exist as evil outside of God? And so it's wrong because it's wrong, not because God has said it, but because it's just wrong, you know. And so I forget the name of that kind of conundrum they try to, but I always say, well, it's a false dichotomy because it's neither.
Right.
Murder.
It's I forgot, but me and Vocab went over it real quick, and it's like the two prongs. I remember him describing it, but yeah.
So murder, so evil, any evil you want to point at, right? Murder. So let's get with murder. Murder, or we'll do something even more practical, like adultery. Adultery is not wrong because it hurts families, right? Like baby daddy leave, now he with his side chick, and now the family's broken up. That's not why it's wrong. Is that messed up? Sure, absolutely. But ultimately, murder or adultery is wrong because God is faithful to his bride. And so you pick the sin and you can have a reason for that. So and that's why it's been eternally wrong to commit adultery, something like that, you know, even before God commanded, you know, before he first gave the command, it was wrong, you know.
I think that's one thing I wanted to just interject. Okay, so let's say on the fifth day, so God created man on the sixth day, right? Mm-hmm. So before man can even exist, there couldn't be any adultery, right?
Right. Yeah.
So on the fifth day, it was still wrong. Adultery was still wrong on the fifth day because God exists, right?
Right.
I guess he imagined it.
Well, so not imagine it, but it flows from his nature. So when Christians appeal to God, we're speaking of the nature of God, the goodness of God. Why evil is wrong is because, well, the nature of God. He's not an adulterer, right? He's not a rapist. He's not, you know, he's not a thief. He doesn't steal. So that's why evil is wrong, because it contradicts the nature of God.
Right. And you would criticize atheists for not having a foundation or justification for why adultery is wrong or why murder is wrong.
Right. So it's not that I wouldn't say you wouldn't believe it, right? Of course, I know many atheists who would say murder's wrong, adultery is wrong. So it's not that you can't make the claim. So I heard it from a Christian apologist. He's a presuppositional apologist who says atheists can count. So imagine this kind of what I'm saying to you now. Atheists can count. They just can't account for their counting. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Right. So, bro, so when it comes to the analogy we're painting, many atheists can speak on immoral acts. I believe they just don't have a foundation, a worldview to justify why this is evil.
Right. I thought about that because it's a very interesting topic to just kind of play with in your mind. Right. And I thought about it and I said, okay, I mean, of course, there's a lot of other things that, you know, there's emotions and feelings that play a part in all of that, right? There's going to have all of that. And it's like a lot of that is like your capacity to be able to do that is like you had no choice in that, right? So that's one thing I think about, which would be in line with your worldview, I guess, right? It's things that are inherently we feel it, right? Because I understand that, and it does. The worldview of a Christian, it can't be disproven. I'll say that. I can't falsify it. But that was my issue, though. It's because I can't really. It can't be falsified, meaning that I can't test it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of things. I mean, yeah, maybe we can get we can go into history, like you said. There's a lot of documents. The Jesus Christ did exist. We know that he exists. Any atheist that says that Jesus Christ didn't exist doesn't know what he's talking about.
So maybe I could come back on that a little, because you're like, well, I can't falsify it, so that what makes it hard. And I understand that kind of, you want to be able to kind of put Christianity in a jar and like scientifically test it, to make sure you're believing the right thing, But there's a lot of things you cannot do and falsify that I would guarantee you accept on a daily basis. So I'll give you one.
Okay.
You cannot falsify logic. If you try, so if you try to disprove logic, you actually verify it, right? Because you have to, you lose your logic. Yeah, exactly. So I'm saying, in a similar way, to attempt to disprove Christianity or disprove God himself, you would actually prove and demonstrate him. So that is kind of like the crux. Like, if you want to get to the crux of my argument, like when dealing with,
I would say there, in that case, logic is a concept. It's not right? It's a concept. So
okay. So do the laws of are the laws of logic universal? Like, so is a fallacy in America a fallacy in Africa, or 10,000 years ago, or however old you think?
Well, I mean, that's the thing with time. There might not be people to apply that logic. So but like right now in a different country, the laws of logic would apply, I would say. Yeah.
So, okay, kind of going back to what you just said, would the laws, because you kind of made it like, well, laws of logic are like kind of like dependent on people. So would the laws of logic exist if there was nobody on the planet, like people wise?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
right.
There couldn't be, because it's an abstract thing. It's like,
okay, so all right, so irrelevant of people, could you have how do I want to phrase this? Could you have Earth, so the Earth's existence, it has no people on it, and could you have the Earth without any existence at the same time in the same way?
Well, existence is classified or defined as, you mean like human existence?
No, like just the Earth, right, with nobody on it, right? Like there's no people. Like could like the Earth exist and not exist at the same time and in the same way?
No.
Right. So the laws of logic would be existing prior to people being on it.
You saying that they should be then?
No, I mean, I would say it is. Like because it's not void of, it's not like dependent upon like people existing to like recognize laws of logic. I would say laws of logic exists because that is the very character of God. God is not illogical. God does not have double standards, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Like I would say, like, all right, I know I can, like, making definitive statements is a thing, like knowing something, right? Like, how can I know? Like maybe even be, I don't know, a little bit certain, or because I think there's levels of it. It's hard to say that, oh, I'm 100% correct. I thought about that a lot, but I don't know if I can say that. So, but I would like to know if I would like to be somewhat certain if I start believing in the God, whether you agree or not. So
that's a good point, because that's the topic and philosophy of epistemology. How do you know what you know? You know what I mean? Like it's the theory of knowledge, right? Like, okay, I'm here right now. Well, how do you know that, right? The Greek philosophers and they love to deal with that question, right? And you have like the Socratic method. He would always ask like, well, why? Well, why? Like that's the child method, like they love to ask why, but I think that's a good thing though, in one sense, because in every worldview, you have to. That's why I think the topic of ultimate authorities are so important, because at some day you have to stop kicking the can. There is no infinite regress, because that's a fallacy. And if you ever dealt with philosophy, there is no this some at some point the can has got to stop being kicked, and you're going to arrive at your answer that you cannot go further than. And so when it comes to, well, how do I know what I know? I mean, I think that's a great question. I think that's a great topic you just brought up, because the theory of knowledge is actually why I'm confident. I am 100% certain in the existence of God, not just on the basis of just like, and I'm not talking about just on like, I haven't really dealt with it. I was always brought in a Christian home, bro. I've had to wrestle with this stuff, as you can probably tell. Like I've thought about it, and I've had that kind of, man, what if God doesn't exist moment, and I had to wrestle with that. And bro, I searched, and I am completely confident, man. If I told this to an atheist once, because they were like, man, what would it prove for you to not believe in God? I think that's a good question. Like, what would falsify kind of what you're saying? And I'd be like, and so I told him, man, you want to know what would help me because I'm so committed to my ultimate authority, right? The only way for me to not believe in God is if God himself came down and told me not to believe in him.
My thing is, like, I don't. I mean, it's like it's hard. I don't know what it would take for me to believe in a God. I can't even tell you what it would take.
I would
encourage
you to think about that, because any good scientist who is pondering a theory or question, has a hypothesis. They have they're doing some experiment. I'm expecting to see this, right? And they're labeling off the thing. So if you're on the quest, or hey, I want to know if God exists. Well, I think there should be some kind of hypothesis, because I think in those hypotheses, in past conversations, I've asked those questions to atheists, and they've thought about it, and they said, well, if God exists, well, we should have had a video recording. Jesus should have came now, and modern technology. And so I think, and that's just one example, they've given more answers than that, but it kind of shows their naturalistic presuppositions. Well, like almost like everything in the past was like, you can't prove, it's like, and so it kind of gets into their presuppositions and stuff like that. And so I think those are good ways to even challenge our own presuppositions,
I think so too. Yeah, definitely. Epistemology is, I don't hear that word enough, man.
Yeah.
First time I discovered epistemology, and Immanuel Kant. Oh, man, what a great philosopher. I pay attention to everything. I like listening to Christian points of view, because they have a lot to say. It's very prevalent in our society, in the Western world. So it's something we got to deal with, just like it's important for us to talk about Hebrew Israelites, because we got to deal with it, man.
All right.
So having a justification for or how do you know what you know, right?
Yeah.
What we want to. So my hypothesis, this is what I've thought about, actually. This is what I would think, but now I'm putting my worldview into it, right? And I'm assuming that a God would pop up. If there was a God, he would do this. But I said this one time. I said, I'm thinking about children that get cancer, right? And I say, if there was a God, why would this happen? This is not affecting anybody's free will. This is not like, because I also thought about, if there was a God, why would he allow? You probably heard me say this, but I don't know if I don't think I'm gonna throw this out anymore. But I used to say, if there was a God, why doesn't he intervene with children being raped or something like that? But then I guess, what would you say? Free will?
Yeah. No, that's not my answer. I know that's the common answer, and I don't like that answer. I don't, depending how you define free will, I don't believe in it.
Let me ask you: do you believe in predestination?
Yeah, I'm a Calvinist.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right. I actually should have asked you that in the beginning, but
yeah,
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 because it's important to know that. But
yeah.
that's a very complex topic too.
Right, for
That
sure.
I haven't done enough research into that.
Yeah.
Like I know a little bit about determinism.
Mm-hmm.
So predestination is very interesting. But yeah, so what would you say in that case,
Yeah.
as far as
So
free will or whatever?
I mean, yeah, any evil act, right? Why doesn't God stop it? So I think
Right.
the assumption sometimes is that God doesn't have a purpose in it. Um, and so this kind of question gets into what Christians have called theodicy.
Yes.
God, yeah, God. So theodicy, God, dikaiosune, which comes from Greek word meaning justification. So God's justification in light of evil is kind of the um, conundrum, so to speak, of what Christians have been dealing with. And the common answer philosophically, yeah, free will, free will. But I don't think that actually answers the question still. I think it just pushes the can back. So as a determinist, I believe that God is sovereign over every act of good and evil. And not only that, as Romans 8:28 tells us, that he is working all things out according to his good pleasure. Um, he's working out well, that's Ephesians 1. But yeah, he works things out according to his good pleasure and mercy. So things like a child being raped, evil act that God has ordained. So
Okay.
someone would say, well, why has God allowed or determined this evil act? Well, so I don't know the exact reason for every single case, but could it be that, and this has happened many times in people's life, that some evil act has caused them to draw closer to God, to where this act has been providentially put in their life so that this person would see how much they need God. And they come to him. I've had examples like that. I think the Lord used that with the loss of my grandmother over 12 years ago, 13 years ago, to where I lost my grandmother, and man, it put me in depression, man, a spiraling down depression, but it
Hmm.
drew me closer to God at the same time. And so I think so that would be my answer, and I think that's the Bible's answer. So and I think the ultimate example of that is the death of Christ. Evil act, right? Done at the hands of the government, right? Hands of wicked people, Jews, Gentiles, everybody in was on this, right? Like for the most part, and they wanted to kill this man. But in the death of Jesus, we see two things: the evil of humanity, right? One, and two, the goodness of God in providing salvation for mankind. So this evil act was brought so that man could be saved. Another example, which you'll probably like this one, um, with Joseph, right? Brothers sold him into slavery, right? They wanted to kill Jesus. They wanted to kill Joseph actually, but God, I would say, um, suppress even their wicked heart, so they didn't kill him, but they just sold him, right? We know the story about Joseph being having the dream and pretty much preserving um, the nation, right, through pretty much like saving their food so they wouldn't starve to death. And
Right.
so that one act of evil, but and if you read Genesis 50, it says, and he's talking to his brother, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. So the same evil act had two different intentions. One from their brothers, they wanted to just get rid of Joseph because of their hatred, but God in the evil had a greater outcome. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And so that's how I would answer the question of theodicy. I don't know what's particularly he's going to bring about on this evil act, every evil act, but I trust in God and that He's doing something good in it.
Okay. That there's a greater outcome, right?
Yeah, even though we cannot see it as finite humans.
I can understand that. I can understand that.
Yeah.
So, because I don't want to just put you on trial here,
No, no. Hey, bro, I'm good, bro. Any questions you have for me?
Right. And any questions you have for me too, man, go ahead, because
All right. So look. I'll ask one. So because here's kind of like why I could not be an atheist. Why by the grace of God I could never come to that position, because it's the issue of morality and like kind of the ultimate authority, things we kind of be getting into. So I guess before I even ask you the question, you can kind of say like, what is evil, what is good, kind of like give your kind of nuanced position. How do you know it? Things like that. I'll let you to get into that.
Well, I think that is subjective. You know, I think that it is based on what I think and what people think individually, but I think that it becomes objective because we have to kind of agree, because we can't, we have to agree. It has to be another party, when we talk about morality, we talk about civil laws, we have to include other people and consider that. So I think that most people consider murder, right, evil. A society that goes around murdering I think it's, even by trial and error, it's proven to just not be a good way to live. And when I say good, I mean like if there's things that people value, right? So I think that plays a major part in what the label and how we label good and evil, and what people value and what people don't value. So I like to look at it like that if I want to break it down to the simplest form.
Yeah.
And the people that are sociopaths or psychotic, those are like the one-offs, right? It's like we understand that they are that, but we're comparing that to a normal person, right? So, it is muddy though. There's muddy waters.
Yeah. So, okay. So, subjectively based, but kind of when you get a consensus, it becomes kind of objective. Like majority of people believe murder is wrong. So
right.
kind of consensus.
We're acting as if it's objective, really.
Okay.
It's really not.
Okay. So that raises kind of two questions. I kind of want to. So if that's the case, it's not a subjective, but it kind of makes it objective based on the consensus. I'll ask two questions. So evil isn't necessary or good. Actually, it's not inherent. It's kind of just gained, if you know what I'm saying. Like nothing. So kind of.
Sorry, you're asking me, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of asking and kind of objecting at the same time. Like, because your view is that nothing, or sorry, it's morality is subjective, and we kind of make it consensually, like, or consensus objective based on like, I'm assuming like majority agreement, things like that.
It's situational, but yeah.
Yes. Okay. So situational, but it could not be inherent. You know what I mean? Like, so I'll give you one example. How do we know at the moment of birth, or even pre-birth, children have inherent value?
I think that we can know that they have inherent value.
Because and what I'm getting at, I want to make sure you understand. If morality, truth are subjective, it's only something we give to that child. That child doesn't have it. We just give it to them. You know what I'm saying?
Right. We place a value on it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the child doesn't actually have inherent value. It's only something we society or parents ascribe to that child.
Yeah. I guess that's yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Okay, so I asked this question at a college campus one time, and he gave the answers to you. So, right, we have a baby, we haven't ascribed it inherent value yet. Okay, got this baby, but I also have this potato. I haven't ascribed it value yet. Like, and I asked the atheist, which one should I drop? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like, which one would it be acceptable for me to drop right now?
Right.
Before I gave any of the value.
Potato, right.
Right. Well, he was trying to be consistent, and so he was really struggling. to give his answer because I think he saw a problem with that professed worldview.
Right.
Because we all know babies are more valuable than potatoes.
Right.
But in the atheist worldview, we can't say that because intrinsic value is something that we give. And so if I haven't given that thing value yet, both of them are kind of meaningless. You know, potato baby, baby potato. Who cares?
Right.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
I think the woman that baby came out of would probably object with with dropping the baby. So it depends who you ask, right, and who
Okay.
values. But yeah, I know what you mean. I see what you're saying. Outside of what we're putting, the value that we're placing, does it have value on its own? And yeah, no, I would say it's kind of like, yeah, I see the dilemma there.
Right.
For
So
sure.
so another kind of fork in the road I want to bring up is, so how do you deal with past injustices that the majority of the people subscribe to? Let me give an example. So the Holocaust, right? So if morality is kind of societal based, right? They determine kind of objectively by a subjective standard, right? What is good and evil. How do we actually know what they were doing was evil and what we're doing is right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because if society is that which it determines that, how, and that's what, majority of Germany did, or you can even pick chattel slavery in America, right? I think majority of people would say that was evil, but based on whom? Because their society determined it was right. Our society determines it was wrong. And how do we actually know we're right and they weren't the right ones? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's why I don't think that there is an objective way to figure out who's right. I think that we have to rely, and this is why, and this is, I mean, this is what I would expect from a world that doesn't have a God. I go
Right.
around the world and I see different definitions for what's good and evil. I mean, they're mostly aligned, right? Like I said, they're mostly aligned with each other, but the only places where, well, not the only places, but usually the places where, I guess, let's say, like, consent, age of consent, right? Like, for example, that some people would say it's evil to take a young girl, because the child, because that's a child. She's not mentally prepared. And that would be my reason. She's not mentally prepared. She's a child. And that's taking advantage. That's the power dynamic that, it happens. Now, the only places I see that are allowing that are religious places. It's like usually where religion comes in is where human rights are usually affected. And I think secular reasoning is what has changed, even allowing people to be owned as property, owning people as one another. So in a way, it's like, I don't think that God even solves that because, I mentioned the King David's child. That was a big one for me because, I have a story, especially the fact that Deuteronomy in the scripture says that children will not pay for the sins of their father.
Mm-hmm.
So not even using my worldview, I'm just going by trying to follow the consistency of the Bible.
Right.
Just trying to figure out, like, well, if we don't pay for if children are not paying for the father's sins, then why would God do that? And specifically say that he's punishing King David by killing the baby. So that's the big one. What would you say in that?
No, that's a good thing. And so I'll say this as well. I'm not saying that there aren't difficult things to deal with in the scripture. There are things that you need to deal with. But I think once you kind of come from a full world biblical view, those things kind of dissolve, so to speak. So let me give a practical example and then we'll dive into that. So
Cool.
I don't believe I affirm what you said in the first part, right? Son shouldn't pay for the sins of the father, but there are consequences to sin. I'll give you an example. A mother taking crack while she's pregnant is going to have consequences to her baby.
Definitely.
the child is not paying for the I would say just outright for the sins of the mother, but there are consequences to it. So likewise, there are consequences to committing adultery. Um, one even just practically today, you bring in a child whom you cared nothing for the mother per se, and now you got a father or parent. Father, y'all both got to parent a child together. Sometimes God brings about justice for sin by the child losing its life. You know what I mean? And that's not to say every time a child loses life, somebody sinned. You can go too far that way. And so that's how I would answer that question, man. God takes sin seriously, you know, and it shows why we should too. You know what I mean? We should take sin seriously and not just be um, going chick to chick and stuff like that. And so,
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, I just want to get a good answer for these things, because
I appreciate
these are like common rebuttals that I like to bring up.
it. Right.
And I definitely haven't heard good response from a Hebrew Israelite, because they're the ones that you get on my live. And
right. So let's engage the question from an atheistic worldview.
Right.
If there is no truth, no objective truth, what's wrong with God contradicting himself? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would just, I would, wouldn't be too confident in what that person,
but what's wrong with not having confidence in what you believe? Because you already don't have that, right? Like,
well, I mean, I pretty much, well, my confidence level comes from experience, so if I kind of experienced already that you say one thing and do something else, I'm gonna not be too confident in what you say, so
right.
that was my issue with that. And it doesn't, it's just based on results. Like, I think I brought that up a lot. I kept saying results.
Right.
And I think that's important to me. And in humans, we plan for the future, right? Mm-hmm. Not knowing that we're going to be alive. We invest, we got a 401k and all of that, but we don't know that we're going to be alive, but we still do it anyways, because we probably, you might be certain that you are going to live. And then when you start becoming uncertain, now you want to probably write up a will or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I think that it all goes back to results, and then how we gauge those results. But as you said before, one's worldview is always going to play an issue in how we interpret results and things. So it's a complex world, but this is what I would expect from a world where there is no God, where we have to go through trial and error. The speed limit, we went through trial and error to find out what's a great speed limit. And it might change later based upon traffic, based upon population. That's what I would expect in a world where there was no God. So, I'm just looking at, the signs. What is a sign of when somebody is not around? They usually don't come up. They usually don't. You can't see them. You can't hear them. You can't smell them, right? You can't touch them. I can't detect God. And
right.
So is God anywhere? Is God anywhere, or is God living? Does he live like outside a time? Like, how would you define where he is?
Yeah. So God is omnipresent, meaning he's he's everywhere at once. He's omniscient. He knows of all things. And yeah, I would also agree that God is outside of time. He's not limited to one point. It's not like God is like stuck in 2021, like, like, no, God is all things, not in a pantheistic sense, but yeah. And so, but that's why I'm not a naturalist. So kind of like what you just brought up is like, you just brought up like kind of like the five senses. God can't be touched, smelled, observed kind of naturalistically. And so I can get why, if you have a naturalistic worldview, that could be troubling. Mm-hmm. But again, I want to raise one little rebuttal. There's so many things you believe that I know for a fact that you believe that you can't do that with. You know, like logic. You never smelt logic, never felt it.
See, but then if you're saying God is like logic, then
no, I'm saying there are non-material things that you already accept. I'm not saying God is logic. I would argue logic is a outworking of the character of God. So, but there are non-material things that you affirm,
like
as a naturalist.
Like oxygen? You mean like oxygen? Or
Well,
like
I think logic fits better because it's not observable in a like chemistry sense, scientific sense.
you can't measure it. Yeah,
You can't measure the laws of logic. You can only see its outworking.
But then that means that God is just a concept and is not real then, because logic is just a concept. It's not real. Like, you know,
I would argue,
like the color yellow. Like I can't say, you know, here's yellow. The things are yellow. Yellow is a concept. There is no yellow. You know what I mean? So is yellow a thing? It isn't, but you know, things are yellow. So it's not, you know, that logic is not so much like God in that way, because God is professed to be a thinking agent, something, you know, that I mean, can we detect God though in any way?
So I was just making the comparison with I'm not saying logic is a thinking, you know, being as God is. I was making the comparison on the non-material aspect. But can we detect God? Well, I would argue yes, because but not on a basis of non-material or non-supernatural presuppositions. Of course, yeah, you'll never find God or know who God is on those principles.
You have to presuppose God.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course. And that's why I'm a presupposition.
God to prove him, like many things.
Right. So, but everyone presupposes their worldview to demonstrate it. You know, there's certain things you're going to assume. Now, I think we have to get to those assumptions and presuppositions when dealing with worldviews, because I think it's a matter of consistency. Who's being more what worldview is more consistent in itself and consistent in the world we live in? I would argue, you know, humbly, that the atheistic worldview is not consistent.
Right.
Because, and I'll give you an example. In the atheistic worldview, we evolved pond scum, fish, stardust, whatever kind of origin you want to give us. Why, in the atheistic worldview, should evolved stardust care about other evolved stardust? Like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, why should I care? And I know you do. You have a family, and I'm thankful that you do. So I'm not saying you don't, but I'm saying, why should you?
Right.
Like, what's the justification for love and care in an atheistic worldview?
Well, I don't think we should. You know, I mean, well, how can I word it? I mean, I think it's beneficial. You know, like people value certain things. You know, so how did we come to that? Is how I would say, like, it's not so much why, but like how. You know, how does it happen? Why do you know? I guess you can ask that way too. Why? But I would just say, you know, people consider feelings and emotions. They understand how it feels, and it's part of our makeup. You know, I would say that we have evolved with a capacity to feel, but atheism doesn't necessarily mean that you just being an atheist doesn't necessarily mean that you have to believe in certain scientific claims like that. You know, what I think we just care about, like, we don't have to believe in anything. We want to be able to talk about God and research God the way that we can do, you know, with other things. And when you mention logic, the reason why we use logic as a process is I think it yields results. And if we presuppose,
so it's like pragmatism, though.
What's that?
It's like it works. Like, the reason why I use logic is because it works. Like, But
Yeah.
so like why couldn't the you know the Christian say, well,
I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
right. Like, I see what you're saying. Just because it works doesn't mean that it's
It's true.
necessarily good, I guess, or true.
Yeah. Because I can give you an example where I could show you something it works, but you probably would reject it because I can make an argument right now. I'm not saying I believe it, but that it is actually good to not love people. It's a good it's a good argument to be selfish and not care about others. Because guess what? Caring about others get you hurt. I can, you can point to examples. You can give examples to why, being selfish, I could have more money, you know, but obviously, I mean, I think we would both reject that. But it works, it's,
Yeah.
um
Being,
so like yeah, so but and logically, just on a messed up level, like dang, it works. But like, but why is that better? Why is that not better than the person who says we should care for our neighbor and love them, and not do messed up things and just like reach out to the poor and things like that?
yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I see people um, that, I mean, you can do these moral things without a God, but this is because I guess you would say this is the nature of God that's in man to do that
Yeah.
because of God. And what an atheist, what most atheists definitely would appeal to science. So I'm not ignoring that at all. But what I would have to appeal to science on that and how and why we have a capacity. I couldn't explain it myself. Like that's something that I guess science would probably explain it best and how we
So
evolve. Yeah.
I don't think science tells you why you shouldn't love your neighbor, or science doesn't tell you what's morally better. Science only observes what it sees. So, and science is something that we do. It's not there's not like this objective thing like, well, we go to machine and science and put in a question and it gives us the answer. Science is something that humans do. We observe. So a scientist is operating his scientific observations based on his worldview. So when people say science says, I'm like, which science?
Right.
Like you have that doesn't answer the question, that science doesn't even speak. Science is something you observe, like
Yeah.
like I said, we both had a rock. The rock's not saying millions of years, or the rock doesn't say God, Science
Yeah.
is something we as humans observe, and it's an observation. So
Yeah. So science wouldn't say that you should or shouldn't love your neighbor.
right, exactly. It's only something we observe, and so yeah, I don't really like when people say, "Well, science says we should." It's like, well, science is an observation
Yeah,
of
science doesn't say anything. Yeah.
yeah. It's I mean, science itself means knowledge, you
Right.
know, um, and so knowledge about what you're observing, and so yeah, man, I really man, like I said, man, I've tried my best to think about these issues,
Yeah.
epistemology and philosophically. Like I said, I don't think Christians should just be lazy and just give the remote, well, just by faith, just believe. Like I think that is a lazy answer. And so I've tried my best not to be that guy to when someone talks with me, man, at least, you know what, I disagree with you, but I can tell you've at least thought about some of these issues I'm bringing up.
Yeah.
And
That was my first impression of you was
yeah,
at least he seems like he can defend his faith and he doesn't rely on crappy answers. I remember my first conversation was definitely about slavery with you.
right.
And it was in the comment section. I believe it was you. It was a
Okay.
while ago, but and yeah, it was just about the morality of owning another human being as property. And
Yeah.
your answer, I forgot where you answered it. I think I might have been on one of your lives. I'm not even sure where it was, but yeah, I can tell. Okay, yeah, you. I went on your channel and I realized, oh, you actually go out there and you went to Arizona State
Yeah.
University and
Yeah.
you were talking to people on there. You did that a lot before?
I've never gone to out of state to do that. That was my first time. But usually, so the first time I started doing kind of stuff like this, kind of talking with people with different worldviews, was at just the local college campus with my pastor. And I just saw, so I had never seen any Christian kind of deal with an atheist. And man, growing my first early stages, I was like, man, atheists are smart. I don't know what I'm, that's is just that common perception, like atheist school and Christians. And so I never talked to atheists. And then I saw my pastor just, I felt like, man, going toe to toe, at least, I would argue, man, he was just demolishing their worldview, but at the very least, going toe to toe with them. And I
don't see that a lot.
Yeah, and I never saw that. And so, man, he really encouraged me to take my faith serious as far as defending it,
Right.
And so,
yeah,
man,
I saw him in action. He's really good.
Yeah, and so that's how I was blessed, man, just to start even doing stuff like this. And man, I take my faith serious.
Tall black dude, right? He was in the other.
Well, no, not that guy. I know who you're talking about, but
he was good.
Yeah, he's a Hispanic guy.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess from here, because I'm done with the questions that I have to, pretty much. I mean, I want to do this more often, bro.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Because I mean, I do have more questions, but I don't want to. I want to keep going on this. Arizona State. Have you ever seen Lawrence Krauss?
Oh,
I think doesn't he teach there?
I think he was. We didn't see him when we were there, but I know who he is.
I kind of want to go and talk about that now. Like, even though I'm not a cosmologist, I don't know a lot about it, and it's very complex when you're talking about outer space. But I thought about this as an atheist. I said, okay, where, I already brought it up. I was like, where was God, right? Wasn't there a space where God was at? Like, it wasn't just God. There was space around him before he created things. Like, have you ever thought about that? I don't know if there's any scripture that can even.
Yeah, Cornelius Van Til. Man, there's so many brilliant Christians that I think that many people have not even gone to the surface. But Cornelius Van Til is one of the most brilliant kind of thinkers, and he wrestled with that, and he said in the beginning, right, that in that beginning there was nothing. And not even the concept of nothing, because nothing is something, like there was, I can't even conceptually understand that concept because I'm working on finite human understanding. But I know what Cornelius Van Til is getting at is that it was just God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, man, something that's hard to, as a finite human creature, to think of a point in time, because all we know is points in times, right? We know beginnings, we know ends. And so that's hard for me to understand. But by faith, I believe it because I trust in the word of God. But I don't understand. I can't grasp in my mind how there was a point in time where God was not, that's hard to understand philosophically, logically, it's hard to wrap your mind around. I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have thought about that.
I remember talking to some of the former ICGJC members who are still Hebrew Israelites, and talking to them about God and why they believe in God. So they brought up one of the apostles that was in the cult and said, well, he used to always bring this up, and I thought it was very interesting, and he always had knowledge, and it wasn't Tazadakia, it was one of the other apostles. And he said that everything that exists has a beginning. But Christians have definitely changed that. William Lane Craig has changed that to everything that has begun to exist has a beginning.
Yeah.
Which is a better way of arguing. But he didn't even know that. Right. He was saying everything that exists, and you already know that's been demonstrated as just a fallacy. I don't know I forget where it started, but because it leads into that infinite regression.
Right.
And then, of course the response is no, well, we have to stop with God. And and it's like, but now you're not consistently using your own logic.
Right.
And I remember at that point I was like, man, there's a lot of issues with these believers, you know. And I'm like, it's just, it seems to be more of a Hebrew Israelite issue though, because Christians, I mean, like I mentioned, William Lane Craig, he held his own with some of, you know, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens. I mean, I watch him a lot. He's great.
I'm not a big fan of William Lane Craig, man.
Okay.
just some of the doctrinal issues. But you should check out, because you mentioned David Silverman. You should watch a debate with him and James White.
White, yeah.
Because I watched a debate with David Silverman and Frank Turek, and I'm not gonna lie, man. I thought David Silverman gave it to Frank Turek, you know.
Okay.
But they had the same debate with James White, and I thought, and so James White is reformed, and Frank Turek is not, and so they had a debate, and it kind of got in like free will issues, and so when he gave the free will stuff,
James White is a Calvinist.
Yes.
Right, gotcha.
And so you should check that out when you get a chance, man, because I thought it was I thought it was telling one of the differences between Christian apologists, and because I think Silverman saw that, and I think he had way more like ammo with Frank Turek, but with James White, he didn't, like, when he was asking this question, he didn't know like where to go. You could tell he was lost.
Yeah. I'll check that out because I've seen James White in action, and he completely dismantled Rakaf from GOCC.
Oh yeah, that wasn't even close.
That was embarrassing because the guy is. I mean, I've seen Rakaf. I've known him. I mean, I don't know him, but I at least know him from YouTube since I was in the cult.
Right.
Tazadakia actually confronted him one time in Philly. And I know some of the doctrines, and it's not your typical Hebrew Israelite doctrine.
Right.
They always caught me off guard because I'm like, what? I don't understand. Like, this is not a typical belief. So I don't know how to gauge these guys.
Right.
But I thought James White, you know, although it was a little frustrating watching it, but it's very telling of what Hebrew Israelites do, how they have no knowledge of the scriptures.
Oh yeah.
And then he had another Rakah. Who's the other guy? Michael Heiser, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't know his denomination, but they went into the name of God there, what it was, and just exposed them. And so Christians are constantly exposing Black Hebrew Israelites. And as far as atheists versus Christians, I'll definitely check that out. But I actually saw one where it was John Lennox versus Richard Dawkins. I don't like Richard Dawkins too much as a debater. As
he's witty.
He's witty, and he's like, his thing is science. And I've gotten a few things from him as far as evolution. And I've read I've actually owned maybe 4 of his books on Audible. So I've listened to him a lot. The Selfish Gene, you know, you name it. I mean, like most of them. But as far as like debating, I think John Lennox got him on a few things at least.
Yeah, you should check out, man. I think it's on YouTube, but right. So you know, Rich, he's dead now, Christopher Hitchens, and before he died, he did a world tour debate with a Christian apologist. Man, what's his name? Hold on, let me look. What's that?
Dinesh D'Souza?
No, it's a Douglas Wilson.
Oh, okay. Douglas Wilson. You said a Christian apologist?
Yeah, Doug Wilson. Let me look it up. And they like went on tour, like debating, and hold on, I'm trying to look it up. Yeah, they did a couple debates, and I thought it was like really good because Douglas Wilson is like the opposite of Christopher Hitchens. They're both so witty, and they both have that same humor, and I think he really like enjoyed Douglas Wilson just as a guy. James White was supposed to debate him like right before, but then he had like his cancer, and it never happened, and so they never got to debate.
Yeah, Hitchens has been a big influence on me.
Yeah, okay.
One of the major influences on me, I would say.
All right.
But finding him led me to other, like David Hume, led me to a lot of that really, like, I started placing a lot of importance in what I believe and reasoning and all of that.
Right.
And it's really important to me. Like, these topics,
Sure,
back and forth, are necessary because, this is part of our country, man. This is like, this is how we're gonna live in harmony, if we don't understand each other. And I think this is great for understanding our points of view. I usually end it at 11:30. It's 11:11. I guess I don't know if people in the comment. I haven't really been paying attention to the comments.
Me either. But maybe I can ask you one question before we kind of head out, because like, man, I'm definitely glad, man, you're thinking about these issues, and I'm thinking about these issues, and kind of delving into philosophical issues and stuff like that. What would be your answer kind of for like nihilism? I don't know if you've kind of heard of nihilism before, but nihilism is the philosophy, like nothing matters, essentially, like everything's kind of meaningless.
Yeah,
like, what would be like your answer?
The Amazing Atheist is like that, I believe. If you ever heard of it.
He's a nihilist.
I think so. Yeah. I'm not too familiar with it, but the whole concept of it seems very pessimistic and down. And I can see how becoming an atheist can lead down that road. But
because Friedrich Nietzsche was a nihilist. I think he's the one that even coined that term. Because
I've read a lot. I wouldn't say a lot. I've read some of Nietzsche's stuff, but I wasn't familiar. I'm not too familiar with that type of belief, but I know it has to do with, just like you said, it's almost like nothing matters,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little dark. It can get a little dark. And
but I think Nietzsche was onto something, though I disagree with him, right? Like, if things do not have intrinsic value, it's only where I give it to them. It's kind of arbitrary, like who cares? In one sense, like we're gonna die and be in the, from an atheist worldview, we're gonna be in the dirt 6 feet under. Like, I mean, who really cares what I do? Like, it's just
I see how it can lead to that. And if you don't have something of value in your life, it can definitely lead to that, I guess, that way of thinking. I never, as an atheist, it never, I guess I value my family, so much that I don't see myself ever going down that way of thinking.
I'm gonna tell you a conversation I had with my brother-in-law, man. It was kind of sad, but he was going through some health issues at the time, so I don't know if that was like messing with his mind or what. But we got on this conversation, and I like talking with him, man, because we get into stuff like this. And with family, I don't usually get into stuff like this because most people in my family or my wife's family could never even engage in like a meaningful conversation like this, sadly. But we were talking, and talking about his atheism. He's an atheist, and I asked him the same question, like why about his children and his wife having value. And he was like, yeah, well, I guess they don't. It's not intrinsic. It's just something that kind of like I give to him. And he kind of was like, yeah, I really have no answer for nihilism. It's just like, I mean, kind of just doing my thing here, and they really don't matter. I just give them matter. I give them meaning. Right. And so it was kind of sad for him to just see his children in the distance and his wife and say, they don't matter really, but I'm just going to treat it like that, because I'm just doing life here. I was like, man, it was kind of sad to kind of hear that, but I got his point. I got his point though. And that's why I think that is a logical deduction of trying to be consistent with one's atheism. And that, that's why I don't believe people can be consistent in God's world, can be consistent with their atheism. Because if you really live that out, if you live out the principle that nothing matters or nothing have intrinsic value,
right.
I mean, nihilism is like over here waving at you like, yeah, come over here and hang out, you know?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but that intrinsic value is there because we're presupposing a God, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we can't ever prove it, though.
I do think we can prove it, but not on.
It takes. I know it's going to take a long time. That's why I don't want to ask you prove it. You know, that's
Yeah. But we can prove it not on naturalistic grounds, right? So many atheists like, well, prove God exists, but they want naturalistic evidence, like show me him. It's like, well, okay, well, if that's your standard, yeah, of course, I can't prove him according to that.
right.
But so I would say the evidence would have to be based on a worldview of his, you know, because he's super naturalistic, and so things like that. And so,
yeah. All right. Well, man, I think we gotta schedule another one in about a month or two. We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe I could be on your channel.
Yeah, definitely, we can do that.
We can talk about Hebrew Israelites and wokeism and all of that. We didn't talk about that enough, and that's my new favorite topic, by the way. You know, I'm done with it. But yeah.
Well, hey, bro. Hopefully, in a month or two, social media ain't canceled us all, man.
Not, man. We'll see where we at. I'll make sure I check your channel on a daily basis to make sure, because we need you out here, man. We need your voice.
I appreciate it, bro.
Yeah. So this was great, man. Thank you very much. This has been San Miguel with K-Dub. Check out his channel. I'll leave a link in the description. He has some great content. And yeah, that's about it. I'll be back next week. Maybe I'll let you know. And you know, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming through.
Yeah, man, no doubt.
All right, take care, everybody. Have a good one.